What's up, party people, and welcome back to another episode of NYC Foodways, your weekly food and culture discussion from the cultural capital of the world. My name is John, and this week we head down East Broadway from the Lower East Side into Chinatown to check out some dollar dumplings at my old stomping grounds. All right, folks, as we head over to pick up our dumplings, I figured I'd give you a little background, personal history in relation to these two places. So my high school back in the day was not too far from Chinatown. We were just one neighborhood over in the financial district. So we ended up spending a lot of time there, not for any other reason than just proximity. I mean, ultimately we got into the food and whatnot, but just starting out, it was a place to go that wasn't the neighborhood our school was into. And being high school students, we did not have that much money, to begin with, and these two places were great. They're perfect. Back in the day, plates of dumplings at each of 5 dumplings were $1 flat. So Tasty Dumpling got the nickname Dollar Dumpling for obvious reasons, and Fried Dumpling was known as the place around the corner. I didn't fancy it as much. I mean, today we'll do a little taste test and see what Chris thinks, but back then, I would say I pretty much only went to Fried Dumpling to kind of break the monotony of going to Tasty Dumpling. And yeah, they were really $1 for a plate. It's very high calorie to penny ratio, which is always a good look. Now they're up a bit, I think, and I'll explain a bit more about the pricing structure, but they're up. I think the price of dumplings may be a better investment than inflation. I don't think the prices have risen as much as the rate of inflation, but yeah, I think it's $1.75 now at Tasty Dumpling, and at Fried Dumpling, you can't even get 5 dumplings anymore. COVID kind of messed things up. We're headed down East Broadway now, one of the most, well, in my opinion, one of the best sections of the city. This is the Two Bridges area, so named for the two bridges that kind of delineate the outer boundary of the neighborhood. Awesome neighborhood, not many tourists, tons of delicious food, great markets. There's a hidden grocery store under the bridge nearby that we're gonna check out at some point in the future. So yeah, catch up in a bit. All right, folks, so one of the reasons I'm highlighting these two spots today is the fact that they're so close to each other. To show you exactly the level of proximity, we'll start here and walk to Fried Dumpling. You'll see how long it takes. So this is Tasty Dumpling. All right, we're gonna take a stroll. And what's neat about the next spot, Fried Dumpling, is it's on Moscow Street. I'd love to learn the etymology behind it. It's spelled M-O-S-C-O. And Moscow Street is unique, the fact that it's a single block long. There are not too many streets in New York that are 1 block long. And this is in the old part of Chinatown, not the oldest, but the old part of Chinatown. And so you'll see as we turn onto Moscow, which is right here, how long it takes us to get to Fried Dumpling. All right, we are on Moscow now. You can see it's an old kind of narrow street. As we approach Fried Dumpling, only less than a minute travel time by foot. Neat. And here we are, Fried Dumpling, the one and only. And that's the thing, right? So we have these two shops whose core competencies are essentially the same. Fried dumplings. I mean, Tasty Dumpling has quite a number of other offerings, but really, these two places, 90% of their business are plates of fried dumplings, and they're around the corner from each other. They both survived, and I love it. It's very New York. I feel like these types of spots, there would either be 2 of them or none of them. So there you go. Hello.
Hello.
How's it going?
Hello.
May I please have 1 small order of fried dumplings to go, please?
Large is small.
Small, please.
Yeah.
You gotta give it the obligatory sauces. You must. And as we enter Tasty Dumpling here, you'll be able to see that the menu at this establishment is a lot more extensive than that at Fried Dumpling. There's some soups, there's some dim sum, there's a number of noodle dishes in addition to quite a few different dumpling choices. Quite different than Fried Dumpling. Hello. Number one to go. Bag, please, yes.
Hi.
Obligatory again. All right, we are victorious. We've got our 2 bags of dumplings, one from Tasty Dumpling, one from Fried Dumpling. We're gonna head to the meeting point and have a little taste test. Let's do it. All right, folks, I got a special guest today. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the millions of NYC Foodways viewers.
I'm Chris Wyman. I am like a proud foodaholic.
Cool. And where are you joining us from?
From San Francisco, was there, grew up in the Bay Area, and been out in New York for the past 2 years, and have tried to eat as much as possible.
I do my best to not be super pretentious, but I do have very, very high standards when it comes to people talking about food and writing about food. And it's rare for me to kind of sense the energy from anyone that I'm like, okay, cool, this person knows what's up. But in my brief time knowing Chris, he's definitely on the level that I respect. So wanted to bring him in for today's dumpling test. And yeah, I guess we can just jump right into it. We have dumplings here from Tasty Dumpling and Fried Dumpling. First we'll do a visual inspection. These are from Fried Dumpling and these are from Tasty Dumpling. So you can kind of see the difference. The Fried Dumpling are a bit smaller and they have a heavier char, right? You can see that. And the ones from Tasty Dumpling are larger, right? And let's try them out.
Oh wow. And what's in it?
They're both pork and chive.
Excellent, excellent. They're tossed with, what are they tossed with?
I douse them in vinegar and soy sauce, blend, and they some like weakened sriracha or whatever. What do you think?
Excellent.
Okay, cool. These are all right. Back in the day, I was always more partial to the Tasty dumplings. Also, they have been in a bag for some time. The skin on these are okay, so I would give them a 6 out of 10.
Yeah.
What do you rate those?
These are, I'd say they're like a 7 out of 10. They're really good. It's a good mix.
Awesome. All right. I'll try
Yeah.
this one again. Try that one. Cheers.
Very cute, by the way.
I hope you join us. I hope you join us. We're all gonna hold hands.
Really two of you, like, staring at
I was thinking about blocking the window so we wouldn't have any.
so cute.
Please come join us. Please come join us.
Honestly, nothing takes precedent over eating dumplings.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, the zombies could be at the door and I'd be, nah, I'm eating dumplings. This is way better.
Yeah.
Way better.
These are good. I like the charred flavor on these though.
You?
Yeah.
So I was telling folks earlier about these places that what I like so much about them is that they're perhaps 200 feet apart. I think it's very New York that you have these two establishments that serve essentially the same thing that are coexisting around the corner from each other. Something about that New York style, like at your throat competition, that would allow both of them to flourish over the decades, I think is really neat. Yeah, it's tough to sort of describe it, but typically when there's competition, one person is driven out, but I feel that certain New York specialties are kind of set up next to each other and try to thrive. So yeah, I give these an 8. They're a little not as warm as I'd like, but tasty nonetheless.
They're delicious.
Where do you like to get? So we're in Chinatown, folks. That's where Chris and I work, blessedly, and we're surrounded by amazing, amazing food. I have not been eating too freely recently, so I don't partake in a number of the spots around here, but I live sort of vicariously through the folks. So any Chinatown spots that you're partial to?
Well, I mean, the food on each place that you introduced me to is amazing, and Vanessa's. I mean, it's literally every day is dumplings, basically. So I can't go wrong.
Yeah. And cool. Well, this is the first NYC Foodways taste test, and positive feedback on both dumplings, so this will be the first of many.
Cool. Thanks, John.
Thank you for joining us.
Yep.
You know, folks, finishing up that tasting and just walking home through Chinatown, and whenever I set foot in this neighborhood and the parts of New York that retain kind of that energy that is not based on rising property values or attracting young workers, you know what that means, or, you know, development, stuff like that. When I'm in neighborhoods that have a different sort of energy, a different sort of vibe to them, a more historical vibe, maybe more community-based, or just something old school, something that has accrued culture over the years, instead of something that has kind of built culture through large expenditures of funds or, you know, venture capital investment or what have you. It's what I really value about New York, and Chinatown is the best example of that, because of the renewed waves of immigrants that are largely absent from many other parts of Manhattan. There's been this sort of renewal that's come to this neighborhood, and obviously gentrification is a beast that can only be slowed, never defeated, but this neighborhood has done better than any other in retaining some sort of energy that is different. It's very distinct, and that energy, to me, where I see is most accessible is through the businesses. So whether it be the dumplings we just tried or any of the other places. So like this, for instance, it's a glass and window shop. There are few, if any, of this type of business in Manhattan remaining, but in Chinatown you can find that. You know, it's analog. This neighborhood is a number of businesses that sell real products. It's not abstraction or you know, financial products or any sort of capital, tech, or anything like that. Chinese Hispanic grocery. You know, this is old school. This is lived, and you know, there's definitely a level of privilege or ability that I have to speak on this, but I still think it's important to do so, to use the platform that I have as someone who can do this work. It's not work at all. This is the opposite of work. Work is something that nobody wants to do. Is important to me. It's important to highlight the energy of this area and all the energy of every other area of New York that is unfortunately threatened by the forces of development, because without it, we run the risk of losing what little of the old New York we have. When we speak of culturally distinct areas, head to the East Village, for example, and there's a small fraction of Eastern European businesses that remain, but the immigrant community in that area is not being replenished. So likely at some point in the near future, no longer be around. I hope not, but the odds are not in their favor. If we go to the Upper East Side, there are a few Central European businesses remaining, but they almost exist as insects in amber, or you know, the last example of their species. They're pretty and nice to look at, but they can't reproduce. Almost exist as museums. And get to my old neighborhood where I grew up on the Upper West Side, there are some gems, Zabars, Murrays among them. But the old school Ashkenazi Jewish businesses are not reproducing. There's not new places opening that have that energy. Chinatown's different. There are routinely new, small, independently operated businesses opening that you will not find in any other neighborhood in Manhattan. And I think that is valuable beyond measure. And I hope you do too.